is TheFrXion here, Tech12, however you want to call me, I don't really care, and welcome back to Wall of Tanks. This time around, we're playing on one of the very few Asian maps in Wall of Tanks, and actually, I think the only one that they have in the game at the moment, and it's Empire's Borders. But before we get into this map analysis, we're going to be talking about some news, some information that I have to share, and that has to do with the upload schedule. Now, up until now, I've tried to upload 3 videos a week. I'll have to reduce that number probably to 2 videos or 1 video a week since I have started college again. And that means the schedule has also changed. Tuesdays and Fridays, I will be trying to upload these videos. That is important, so you guys know what I mean with it. And I just wanted to inform you guys, stay transparent. That's kind of the best policy in my opinion. And we're going to stop the gameplay real fast because I wanted to talk about this map a little bit more. So yeah, that was a very rapid kind of introduction into this video. We're taking a look at Empire's Border. Now this is probably the newest map that has been added into the game. I already forgot, but it certainly is one of the prettiest from the looks, with the different colors, the lush green colliding with, you know, the red of impending fall, and then you have the Great Wall of China in the background, and quite a few mountains. It looks very, very scenic, and it looks really cool. So it's probably not the reason why this is one of the most disliked maps in World of Tanks, but we'll get to that topic just in a second. Now, this map, its design and its choice of location is, yeah, pretty straightforward. This is a map that was catered for the Chinese server, and it made its way into the different other Wall of Tanks servers anywhere anywhere other from China. And definitely it is a map that was kind of catering towards the Chinese people to maybe get them more interested into the game. I'm not sure if that is maybe the straight response, you know, like they see this map, they want to play the game because it's somewhere based in China. But that certainly is not the problem why people have a problem with it. If we take a look at this map from above in bird's eye perspective, you can pretty much get a sense of what kind of a map it is. What you'll notice immediately is that it does seem to be quite spacious, but on closer inspection, that feeling does certainly decline the closer you get to the areas that you're looking at. Now, I think it's very important to see the minimap to understand what I'm talking about. Now, later on, we're going to have an in-depth analysis. I just want to talk a little bit about the map's basic features and what a map it is. So, very straightforward, this is a corridor map. Now, corridor map, that does sound very familiar, right? So where have you heard that? Corridors in World of Tanks have not been, this is not a new development. This is not a new discovery. Basically, corridor maps have been in World of Tanks for a very long time. If we look at Rudenberg, if we look at Himmelsdorf, and then some other maps that are already forgotten the names of, but we all know corridor maps in World of Tanks are one of the favorites for the developers, and one of the reasons why people were so much looking forward to Frontlines, because it was just such a huge, spacious map. Now, there's also the very different kind of map, a very open map like Malinovka or Murovanka, where people tend to be a little bit too, too open, and they think that the maps are maybe a little bit too large, not too large, but without enough cover. Now, so basically you have both worlds, but you also have some mixes, some mixed maps, which do tend to have two things, you know, corridors and some open spaces. But this certainly is a very, very corridor looking map. We have a corridor from the north enemy team spawn, which goes down the entire one line. Then we have a corridor going down the A line from the northern spawn Then you have a corridor from the southern spawn, which is mirroring the corridor from the northern team to make it balanced, with the 9 line or 0 line to the north. Then you have to the west the K line as a corridor. And basically what happens is that people will clash at the ends of these corridors right here at J1, J2, and on this plateau over here, which both sides will try to push very early on, and then obviously on the other side here at let's say B9 and C0. Now that's nothing spectacular, right? Now, why are corridor maps so disliked? Basically, what I'm playing right here is a medium tank. It's the Comet, a very, well, not very lightly armored, but let's say a lightly armored British medium tank that does have decent mobility and that certainly can move from one place to another. Now the gun, I think I have a 77mm gun, and it certainly does not have the best penetration or the most damage or the highest alpha damage, but it does have pretty decent DPM. And if I can get to the sides of the enemy team, I can do some serious damage. But if we take a look at this map, we notice very early on that the places where you can maneuver in a vehicle with decent mobility, it certainly doesn't really exist, because most of the places are very narrow, they are very closed, and the very first thing you'll notice immediately from the get-go when you start this map and you look at the minimap is that about, I'd say, I'm not even sure. I'm not sure if I can say 50% of the map surface, but I'm going to be very, very bold in this statement. 50% of the map surfaces are covered with mountainous area which you cannot actually climb. Now that basically leaves you only with 50% of the playable field, which is already quite narrow and very, very hard to get to. So what kind of things do happen? So if you take a look at the constellation of your team, playing against some tier 8s, mostly tier 7s and tier 6 vehicles, heavy tanks tend to go down this one line or the K line and then brawl out over here. Medium tanks, maybe some of them, which are a bit more on the side of better gun depression, go up onto this plateau right here and then battle it out. And you maybe have some light tanks and tank destroyers that are sitting over here, you know, defensive-minded tank destroyers sitting back at the end of their corridor, sniping down this big valley in the middle. Especially, I had a game in my UDES 03, and I was sitting at the back over there, and since my team was attacking very early on, it was very difficult for me to get into the game because the amount of the places where I could set up were quite limited. So what happened is, right here, we're pushing this one flank, and what happens with corridors is that a lot of people will bunch up into one of these corridors, and they'll either, if they meet enough resistance, they'll fight it out to the death, or they just bunch through one of the places and just push through. What happens is there are basically no dynamic battles, there is no real kind of front line that establishes, and it's going to be very difficult for the one team that hasn't stacked one of the entire lines to go back and defend the base from the intruding enemies. The problem right here is, if you take a closer look, you only have one place that can either outflank the enemy, but since it's a very open kind of field and you are at least on the higher ground, you still have quite a way of travel to go back to your base. So what happens right here is, I've just set up no minute ago on this plateau, and what happened was, since the enemy team completely abandoned the 1-2 line, what happened was that the one or the three vehicles that we had on the 0 line were completely overrun by several vehicles heading straight for our base, and two kind of fronts did develop. Now our heavy tanks, obviously by this point, are not going to be able to do very, very well over here at the 1-2 line because they're not going to be fast enough to cap the base. Well, my base is currently being capped by the enemy team. So what happens right here is I thought, you know what, I dealt 0 damage. I'm just going to be attacking them right now and driving back to the base to actually deal some damage or maybe try to reset, do anything. But since this is a corridor and they know that the only way I can come back from is basically from over here, or I have to go through the middle right there, which they actually control as well, I will not have a choice but to go through this corridor, and I have no other opportunity. So what happens is they outcap our base. The game is over in less than 4 minutes. We only have destroyed 1 vehicle, and they haven't done a lot of damage, but they have just pushed through with their crazy amounts of numbers. And this is something that does happen on this map quite often. Either you have to, like most of the time, a lot of people will just go down this 1-2 line and then have quite a few tanks on this plateau, and what happens is they completely ignore the 9 line or the A line, and they just try to waltz their way right through here and go to the enemy base and capture it out. Now, certainly a game like this is catered for this kind of class. Well, unfortunately we can't see the heavy tank because my tank just has been destroyed, and I don't have the radio range, but it certainly is the perfect map for heavy tanks. Very heavily armored heavy tanks that maybe have good gun oppression. They are going to be excelling on this map. And the problem is just that heavy tanks and very heavily armored tank destroyers are going to be having a blast, while basically every other class, lightly armored tank destroyers, lightly armored light tanks, lightly armored medium tanks, are going to be looking down a pipe where they can only see their death. Now, what happens is you are not able to actually flank any route. You are limited. There are very easy choke points you can hold, right? Like right here, this position can be defended very easily, and the amount of travel distance you have to take upon yourself to get back into to defend your cap and to get back is extremely crazy. So what happens is this is a horrible map because it's just so linear that doesn't allow you to have any kind of tactical advantage. If you maybe tanks down but you have fast vehicles, you are probably going to be still running into a defeat because there is no tactical depth in this map. Because basically the only way you can play this map is to either bunch out one route or the other, and since the middle part right here is just a huge pain in the ass, you don't have enough place to maneuver. The most important parts of the map can be held down with choke points, by holding the choke points, and the movement is very restricted. Now this obviously does work for this class in particular. Artillery doesn't have an issue covering these corridors. Heavy tanks don't have an issue covering these corridors, but light tanks, medium tanks, lightly armored tank destroyers are going to be running up into a wall. This is one of the reasons why people don't enjoy this map, because what happens is, well, they're going to be pushing one part of the map, you're on the other one, and they're just going to be outmatching your entire team on that flank, and you have to head back to your base. Maybe you're fast enough, but you'll just get evaporated trying to get there because there's only one route you can take, or 2 routes, but they can still be covered quite easily because there is no mobility. So that's basically all there is to this map right now, but we're going to be taking a closer look at the map on the specific website that I've used previously, and then we can talk a little bit more about why I think this map is just not really a good fit for World of Tanks. So let's jump on over. So let's take a look at this terrible map. Oh, excuse me. How we set up in that matchup. So we had quite a few tier. Okay, that's definitely the wrong color. We had quite a few tier 8 heavy tanks that were following through with us. So whenever I think of this map, I think that the important places that need to be held, or at least I can draw the zones where usually most of the time um, combat does happen. That is okay, definitely not that. Combat that usually does happen is right here, right here, right here, and maybe even over here. What you'll notice is that a big part or a big portion of this entire open field, this valley part, does tend to be left out. People do not like to travel down this route or this because they're very exposed once they're over here to get fired this direction, from this direction, and even up here. So you have to have 100% trust in your team, and you guys know that World of Tanks, this is definitely not the best game to have 100% trust into your teammates. And that makes it so difficult to have a map such as this. So what happened was basically all the enemy vehicles decided to just push this way and go down the 9 line. Now, I've already mentioned that I've seen a lot of guys do the same thing, but from the other side, the 1-2 line, and the same goes for the same team from the south and just doing the exact same thing, thus creating a huge brawl over here at J1 and K1. Now, usually the side with the better heavy tanks and the guys with more damage do come out victoriously. But in a game like this, where they actually just completely outflank you and drive straight to your base, what happens is, or what cannot happen, is that all these heavy tanks that are already over here, they cannot move on further to the cap, especially if they are already sitting on the cap with 2 vehicles. Now the problem is, at this time of the game, usually it's already too late. These heavy vehicles, they took so long to get from over here up to this point that they were already on cap and capping us out. And that happens when basically one side gets, stronger or more units on one side than the other. And it's going to be making it very difficult. The balancing on this map is very difficult because it's basically just corridors with a bunch of vehicles that maybe are not suited perfectly for one-on-one engagements. What I'm talking about is very lightly armored tank destroyers, such as the UDES 03 up in the north. UDES 03 or the STRV, both of these vehicles cannot be utilized as effectively offensively as a Soviet Object 704, for example, which can be utilized as a defensive and offensive vehicle, but they do not excel. So on a map like this, where would you put an UDES 03? Where would you put an STRV 103B? The thing is, you have absolutely only a few options. If you are in the southern spawn, basically what you would be doing with an UDES is I would be sitting here and maybe I would be sitting over here. Because the only places you can actually really engage effectively without, having to maneuver constantly would be actually this kind of valley part right here. Sit on this entire line. This is like the most effective place you could use as an tank destroyer to be able to engage these guys crossing over here. Same goes for the other side where you actually are a little bit limited, but you could utilize these positions over there, or you can utilize that position right here and shoot the guys that are coming through. But obviously for that you would need to have a lighting source, then would be a light tank, whatever. But the problem is, because this map is just very unbalanced and very closed, those light tanks that you have are maybe going to be coming over here, and they might just drive over here and maybe even go up here to engage in the fight and flank the guys, or just try to flank the guys that are moving up here. They're moving up here into this position right here. But the problem is these light vehicles, if they try to go down the lower route, will not be very effective in lighting, because you don't have any view range towards the enemy teams that are, right here. You can't see what is moving through this area right here into the spawn, or over the flank into this corridor, and it just takes a very long time to get there. This is the wrong color. To get over here, like from here to get over here, because of the different height that you have to use, and it's very difficult to come back from that. To stay alive at the same time, it's very difficult, because when you're trying to scout them, right, you're trying to actually have your enemy or your friendly vehicles in the back shoot those guys that are currently pushing through. Now, usually your vehicles, your friendly vehicles that are right here or here, they are not going to be able to help you or assist you. Same goes for these guys right here. You don't have any lines of fire towards this area, and they are just too slow to get into position for these guys, for the enemy team to actually get into the spot. So what ends up happening is just basically they're going to be able to go into the attack, and if they outnumber you, like, I don't know, 5-2, 5-2-3, they're just going to be able to destroy you by numbers. So without getting hit once, they're going to be able to push right into here, or the same can go for this team right here, go into here and into the base. So these corridors can only be defended if you have enough vehicles in those places, right? Only if you have like four medium tanks right here engaging 4 other medium tanks right here. And then basically what's going to be happening is the ones that have the best armor, the ones that have the best gun depression, the ones that have the best HP and the best aim will come out victorious, right? Because let's face it, 4-on-4, that's a fair battle. If they're all the same tier, it's going to be working out. So the idea behind, having corridors in Wall of Tanks is actually not too bad, because you're creating an equal playing field where if the tanks are the same level, the same tier, the same size, with the same components, if they're fighting against each other, it's kind of balanced. But the problem is that Wall of Tanks is not a balanced environment. This is not a balanced game. What happens is, well, one side is just going to get overly charged with freaking heavy tanks, while the other side is just going to be running with like 2 medium tanks over here, because all of their heavy tanks are going over here. So what happens is just that, since we can see this in every other game as well, that one of those sides will push through, get into cap, and capture it out. And that is not going to be a very engaging experience. The biggest issue I have with that is, since when you're sitting, when you're in this position right here, and it turns out that the position over here is being overrun by several enemy vehicles that are just pushing straight to base, you can still get back to base, right? Engage them from over here, but your line of fire is very limited. Like, if they just push through, you don't have a lot of force that you can set behind to actually engage them. So it's not just that, it's also that because it's just this one place where you can push through and get back, you're also only limited to 2 options, going back here or going over here to cap. So what ends up happening is just what happened with my team in the game is they were able to hold these two positions, and you can basically do absolutely nothing to stop them from capping the base, except if you have enough numbers to come back and defend the base. So medium tanks and light tanks are basically very useless on this map because the mobility, you cannot use your mobility to your advantage, and thus is the reason why people absolutely hate this map. I understand it. I think it's a bad kind of map design. If they would open it up a little bit more, if they would, reduce some of these mountains a bit, maybe make this passageway larger and remove this entire mountainside right here, it would make the map more versatile. Maybe just add one huge mountain in the middle right here that really does give you protection from one of the sides. And they basically, what I'm saying is they should open this map up more. If they open this map up by a large margin, it would definitely work out a lot better. But right now, the playable area is very limited. The place of maneuvering is very limited, and the ability to actually engage your enemy from behind or actually flank them and use any tactical kind of advantage to help you win a fight is basically zero on this map. There are no bushes that you can utilize over here or over there, and what ends up happening is just, yeah, the one team, the very basic kind of thing happens. The easiest solution is just to have 100 guys on one side push through, and hope that they are not fast enough to push through while you're just going straight to their base. So this is like the most boring kind of engagement that I can think of. It might be thought of to be a decent thing, but the reality does show you that it certainly doesn't really work out. And that is the reason why I think this map doesn't really do as well as other maps do involve tanks. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, as always, comment, like, and subscribe. And I'd love to hear you guys' opinion on this map, Empire's Border. I think it's one of the worst maps in World of Tanks. Am I right, or am I talking complete trash? Do you like this map? Yes. If so, why do you like it? If not, yeah, tell me the reasons why you don't like this map, and I'll see you guys on the next video.